So we're going to talk about Theodore now. I thought that this was probably your version of Citizen Kane, but brought down in terms of the importance. It's not necessarily about America or anything. It's about this woman named Annabelle who I usually am able to decipher exactly which character it's based on your real life from what you told me. But I think that it's mostly a composite character because it seems to be many different characters. There's another one in An Eye Other Human named Arthur that I think is a composite character. Tell me some of the biographical elements of Annabelle, and then we'll get into some of the more important aspects of the play itself.
Well, I mean, the Annabelle character is based upon one particular person that, not a woman I was ever involved with sexually, but one I was a friend with. In a sense, this is a play that's similar to A Matter of Propinquity, in that this is a person that I've lost touch with and a friend that I'm no longer in contact with. The difference is, whereas with the Jake Stemler character, he's sort of slowly frittered off. With the Maydeen character, she has a new life, and I still am in touch with her a few times a year by phone call or email. This Annabelle character, there's a bit more animus because she basically became a sellout. She had one book published, she became a sellout, and she doesn't seem to recognize it. I bring in her sister and her mother. We get
her mother is a highlight in the comedic sense.
Yeah, and then we get some of the same people from the second woman. The Linda Burton character shows up. We get similar scenes of the wackiness. We get a scene where a couple of gay guys attack a lesbian with shaving cream. That's a real incident. And this is one of the things when I hear people talk about, for example, all gays stand together. Back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, gay men and lesbians hated each other. They thought each of them was going to destroy the quote unquote queer movement or whatnot. And so I bring that in, and then I have some of the same characters. The Johanna character, the Susie X character appear again. The manager of the coffee gallery, a large male bouncer named Tiny. And we get, again, people from the audience participating. So in some ways, it mixes some of the same elements as the second woman and A Matter of Propinquity with this overarching sort of Citizen Kane-like thing. But the ending, the revelation of who Theodore is a direct steal, too, from the ending of the Polanski film, Repulsion, where the camera peers around the room, and then it ends up on the photograph. Have you seen?
Citizen Kane.
Yeah,
and Citizen Kane
but
Rosebud.
Yeah, but
the difference between Rosebud is that reveals what Rosebud is. Even I don't necessarily, because of the conversation being expanded, it's almost deceptive of whether or not that is actually Theodore, or whether Theodore is just this endless MacGuffin or not.
Well, it is a MacGuffin, just as Rosebud is a MacGuffin. But I mean, it seems kind of absurd, but it would have been more absurd had I put it in. I mean, we don't hear. She doesn't begin the play going Theodore or whatnot. We hear a few people mentioning that she had said this or whatnot, and so the ending that it turns out to be a teddy bear in her room or something. Is in a way a really absurd turn. So that this is where some of the absurdism comes in, and using some of these elements from these films, and having it end with that instead of having the camera go around and see the photograph in Repulsion, we have a spotlight that ends up on the teddy bear. And then I even end it with, a sort of absurd note to the director here. It said, note to the plays director. If the aforementioned stuffed animals cannot be found, reasonable substance is made as long as they equal the number of stuffed animals mentioned. To facilitate ease in chewing off the ear, said chew is free to apply a condom to said teddy bear. So this wouldn't appear to the people watching it on stage unless the director wanted to put it there, which is fine. But it gives a sense of the absurdity, and part of the absurdity, the reason that there is the absurdist aspect is my making fun of the whole Annabelle character. I have the Annabelle character sell out to one to this TV guy, and I'm not going to name mention the name of the actual person that's based on. But the one person I do mention is Robert Bly, the poet, who she sold out to.
I did want to mention, since you stated this director's note, that you can only read this rather than the audience receiving it. I thought that was an important thing. Your plays are probably the only examples I can think of. I've watched several plays before, and I noticed the difference between, say, Long Day's 30th Night on stage versus reading it. But your plays probably have the biggest divide in that I think people reading it are going to get a completely different picture, so to speak, than they will watching this. I think they would be vastly different performed versus read.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing. I mean,
it is a good thing because it gives you two different ways of looking at it. And when Shin has analyzed some of these plays, I think he did maybe after he's gone, and he made that point too, in that seeing that sometimes seeing it actualized like a film will not necessarily be lessened, but the fact that it will be vastly different, and you'll have an actual fart track rather than just compressing that in your mind.
Yeah. Or
that characters have to improvise scenes rather than you doing the improvisation in your mind. Since reading is much more active versus watching it being passive.
My plays are not just works of theater and drama; they are works of literature. And there are plays. If you look at Samuel Beckett, you can get a good rendering of his most famous play, Waiting for Godot. But one of the things in rereading a lot of some of the famous plays over the last 6, 7, 8 months, even a year going back while I was doing my science fiction book in preparation for doing plays, was that even the greatest plays, The Death of a Salesman, the Streetcar Named Desire and whatnot, one of the things I noticed was a lot of times they don't read well as literature. They can be acted well, but my stuff, my conversations are so much better than any other playwright, and that's and not only are they better, but I minimize them because what a lot of playwrights do is they put in the stage directions things that should be inherent in the spoken words of the characters. For example, and I even, in this last play I did, I do a little riff on that, in that if you have two characters talking and whatever the drama is going between them, you don't need to say, Mabel is kind of hesitant and unsure of what she is saying, and so she approaches Bill in a slightly fearful manner. That should be inherent in how the words, so that in what is being said in the words and not being said, so that any capable actor is free to improvise, so that if on Sunday night if the Mabel character is supposed to be somewhat scared of Henry, in one performance she may play it a little more fearfully. In one, she may be a little less fearfully. And that gives the actors and the directors a great leeway in interpreting these plays, so that if you were to see this play 10 times in a row, you would be able to, with a good director and good capable actors, you would be able to get 10 slightly different versions of a play which form a continuum and a parallax with each other. And that's the important thing. And you don't get that with even the better playwrights, be they August Wilson or Tennessee Williams or any of the great modernists. And that's one of the things that I wanted to change. And that's one of the frustrating things is I know that there are a lot of these people that I'm sending these plays around to in theaters that my stuff is beyond them. I mean, it's just beyond them. And I don't say that to brag or to be dick waving, but it's true. My stuff is just so much deeper, better, and richer that most people who even study drama are not prepared for it, because a lot of, like I said, a lot of what lesser playwrights, even some of the great ones, contain in some of these really. I mean, I forget which play I was recently reading. It might. I might have been Reginald Rose's 12 Angry Men. It might have been Streetcar Named Desire has Tennessee Williams gets a little too flowery and poetic in his stage directions, rather than putting some of that offhanded poesy in the mouths of the characters. Well, how could Stanley Kowalski be you have to put the poesy in offhandedly so that a Stanley Kowalski could speak poetically without necessarily knowing what he's saying. How do you do that? You do that by parallax. A lot of life's real poesy comes from the parallax. Humor comes from parallax. When one character is a little bit more serious than the other character, you get that who's on first, Abbott and Costello thing. And that happens in real life. That someone is talking, 3 or 4 degrees higher than the other person, and the other person, it's just like bang, bang, bang. They're not getting what the other person is saying. That produces humor, but that can also produce offhanded poesy. My writing does that, and it's often contained within the things that characters slightly missing things. You get humor, but you sometimes also get poetry. The woman of no consequence stuff. You get we talked about this before. You get a little bit of that. I mean, reading that play, and presumably with good actors, you get it too. In watching it, you get the sense that Melissa is somehow turned on by the tension that this man she hasn't seen in 35 years or something has an interest in her. That is understated. I don't have to say that in the stage direction because it's there in the writing. If you're an intelligent human being, you should be able to get that. If you don't get that, you shouldn't be in goddamn theater. You shouldn't be in the arts. Get the fuck out.
Do you think that all prior playwrights were afflicted by this? You think O'Neill lacked to give the characters offhand poesy? I don't think that he had the same kind of level of parallax because he didn't have much of a sense of humor.
Well,
but just give me your thoughts on that.
Well, I think the best modern playwright that I would say overdid it with the stage directions was Williams, the most famous one. He probably overdid it. That having said that, the writing itself was strong enough in his top 5, 6, 7 plays. Night of the Iguana, Glass Menagerie, Streetcar, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, and a handful of others. O'Neill was not as heavy-handed in the stage directions. Arthur Miller was far more heavy-handed. Miller is probably more overrated. August Wilson overall is probably a better playwright than Arthur Miller. But anyway, but
one thing I noticed, I was reading some of Long Day's Journey to the Night a while ago, and I also watched a production of it.
Which one? Which one with
Long Day's Journey into Night? I have it right here.
So, but I mean, which did you see the movie from the 60s, the film, or did you see the PBS production from the 80s or 90s?
I've seen both at alternate times. I saw the one that Sidney Lumet directed, and I saw the one with Kevin
Malkovich.
Spacey in the role.
With the one with John Malkovich.
No, it was Kevin Spacey in the role of Jamie.
Oh, okay.
And Jack Lemmon in the role of Tyrone.
Well, we won't see that version with Kevin Spacey for a long time, probably.
Well, you've mentioned that as an aside. I find those type of things annoying in a sense because he is still a good actor.
Yeah.
And I've had conversations with people where they can't really separate the man from the acting. So he may be a toad in real life, but I don't really give a fuck. He's a great actor, or at least a very good actor, and he's had a few great performances. And I would consider his role in Long Day's Journey to the Night being one of them.
Yeah.
But as I was watching that, and then I was also reading this, I noticed that O'Neill almost breaks things down to the letter, whereas your stage direction doesn't. He's describing the room. He's describing exactly which books will be in there.
Yeah.
And I assume people haven't really followed this to a T, so it sort of makes it inconsequential why he would include this, why he needs to include Schopenhauer and Nietzsche and Marx.
Well, I'll tell you why. Do you want to know? I'll tell you why. Because some artists need to be able to fill in all the... In order for him to put the drama, O'Neill probably had to have that background there. Because probably in his life there were very similar things as he's projecting from memory. To me, most of my plays, virtually all of my plays, it's blackness with just a few props, which should make them easy to produce, which is another reason I do that, but it's the lesser reason. I will at some point, a few years from now, maybe 70, 80 plays in, do some highly realistic dramas with no, just as I want to, just as I do things, just to show that I can do highly realistic dramas with nothing there, and just have the words be cutting like fucking knives into each other. But that's the reason. He could not have written A Long Day's Journey into Night in his mind without that. He needed that detail. If he was to have a black stage like I did, he would have been lost. He needed that.
It seems very dictatorial, though. If you need it to get started, then fine. But you sort of just begin reading this like going through clear water. It's not as if it's not well wrought. I think that it is. But once you get to the actual conversation between Tyrone and Mary, that's where I think the play actually starts.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily give a shit about reading 3 pages of stage direction.
Yeah. Well, and because most, when you're actually watching it, you know, you're not going to see. I mean, you're not having the spotlight like I did having on the teddy bear. You know, here's Schopenhauer, because someone in row 17 isn't going to be able to make out Schopenhauer.
That's another good point as well. I did want to mention Mary Dugan in your conversations with her, where she's sort of searching for the rosebud of the play, the Rosetta Stone of her daughter. And even though Jill is briefly sketched, you get the animus between them, and you also get a lot of the resentment that came with Annabelle. But going and approaching you and asking you to give her some information on these shitty manuscripts that she sends you is an interesting tact, and it basically allows you to pontificate on many different subjects. The fact that Annabelle was a sellout, and not only just a sellout, but why would you even want to waste your time reading someone that is vastly inferior to you?
Yeah.
Talk about that device and the character of Mary, because she does get quite nasty, even though she's asking you for help. She begins slowly being passive-aggressive throughout it.
Well, it should be stated that I never met the real Annabelle's mother or sister or anything. So these are totally made-up scenes, and this is you know, the stuff with the readings and some of my conversations with Annabelle are the real things. They make up maybe 25% of the play. 75% of the play is just, oh, this is what the plot is. The mother trying to find, because the mother apparently wants to kickstart her career after the death of her daughter by finding out who this Theodore was, because she wants to write this book, presumably about, you know, her tragic daughter's death and this mystery man, presumably Theodore, and who he was, and so she comes asking Danny. We get the sense that the mother hates the guy Annabelle married, etc. And it's just, I mean, that's to me probably the least interesting thing, other than that it's a good sketching of a Harridan-like mother. This is a female character. I often have a lot of older female characters who are Harridans. Aunt Darla, the mother here, and the next play, A Rose for Emily. The Emily Clemenza character is the most comic and absurd creation in that vein. But there's often older female characters who are domineering in the play and in my plays, and this is a typical one. She's rich New York money, Upper West Side Manhattan, full of herself, thinking, you know, she's the shit and whatnot. And it doesn't impress Danny. It doesn't impress the husband. It doesn't even impress her own daughter. And so, but it does provide the MacGuffin for the play.
People will probably accuse you of sometimes exaggerating this, but I know from at least one of the female characters that it's sort of dead on. I wanted to talk about the Jessica character here. She makes a brief appearance, but I thought, knowing Jess, that you really got an aspect of her. And then also the character of Annabelle, how you have these long conversations, and any time that there becomes conflict, she tends to deflect. You know, you're getting on the fact that she's selling out to Robert Bly and trying to coast on his morals, and she tries to distract from that with some innocuous comment, or she wants to speak about something that's a little more friendly theme. With Jess, I thought it was interesting that she says that she's a highly sensitive person, so she often avoids conflict. So she has these, but she still sees some of the same things you do. When Annabelle approaches her in the middle of this play, they're saying niceties to each other. But when Annabelle is gone, then Jess unleashes upon her as well as a few other characters. There's also this character, I forget the name of it, that comes up, and she's sort of a nice woman, but also a dope, that just mentions this. Speak about that because, again, these type of absurdities happen in real life, yet they're often left out of drama. And it doesn't necessarily have to be so dramatic in the sense that there's lots of melodrama and pathos. There can be tons of comedy in real life, too.
Well, I mean, and you have to do that. I mean, this play has comedic moments, but it generally is a drama. The next play, A Rose for Emily, is a flat out comedy with a few dramatic moments. But yeah, I mean, people
Would you say that I don't think I've ever read a pure comedy for me?
Then you haven't read A Rose for Emily?
No, but you haven't.
You haven't read that?
Yet?
A Rose for Emily. You haven't read that play?
No, I didn't even know you wrote it.
Okay, I'll have to get. Oh well, that play will have you pissing in your pants. I mean that is by far my funniest play of the 23 so far. But before we sign off, remind me to send it to you then.
Okay, I didn't even know you wrote that.